And so how did it come about that they told you you were HIV positive?
My doctor in Bellingham got word that one of the units of blood was given by someone who had been diagnosed HIV positive. So the blood bank was going back and seeing what blood donations this person had made and was notifying the people who had received them. And so they said, you need to call this person that got it and tell them to go get an HIV test. And he called and he said, we start out the conversation with, you'd better sit down. So I sat down and he goes, well, this is probably nothing to worry about because this was 6.5 years ago. But the blood bank called me, and one of the units of blood you got, the person who gave it has HIV/AIDS. And so I'm suggesting, and they're suggesting, that you go in and have an HIV test. And I had been not feeling well for some time with weird things like night sweats, swollen glands. I was exhausted.
So when you went and got the test, when you got the news that you were positive, what did that do to you?
Well, I think I was just a little bit in shock because there was no big reaction. My immediate thought was, are my kids okay? I mean, I'm a health educator, so I'm pretty aware of the fact that you can get HIV from nursing a baby, you can get HIV having a baby if you're an HIV positive mom, you can pass it on. Scott and I were having babies, so obviously we were having unprotected sex, so I was worried that he would be infected.
And I imagine once you know your family was okay, you then focus on what is the prognosis? What did they tell you?
I was, 32 years old, and I'm at the doctor, and we're going through the initial stuff, and some of the first questions he asked me were, do you have a living will, and are your things in order? And I was just like, oh my gosh. It just kind of hits you. This person thinks I'm going to die soon, So I asked him, I said, well, how long do I have to live, And he said, well, it's hard to say, 3 to 5 years if you're lucky. And make sure, and then his next thing was, make sure you go and do anything you want to do now, because the last 2 years are going to be really bad. And it's not cancer. This is not like going to go into remission. It was, so that day driving home from the hospital was, I was pretty upset thinking, I'm not going to even see my kids get out of grade school, much less get married or graduate or have kids or any of those things that you kind of think about in the future. So it was a tough day.
Ryan, what do you remember? At what point did your parents tell you, and how did they tell you?
It's I was very young. I think I was 6.
You were 6.
Youngest in my family. So, but it is one of a distinct memory of my childhood. I remember my dad took me and my 2 older sisters down to a flower garden type of thing in Spokane, kind of at a park. I honestly don't exactly remember how he framed it. He's told me before, but I think he was trying to frame something that was very complicated for people his age to a 6-year-old. And I kind of got it. I think that idea that we don't really know how long she has, my parents ran with, and we went and did stuff as a family all the time. So I had probably a more exciting childhood than I would have had, I think. Road trips, and they got a little lake cabin, and trying to very much do a lot of stuff as a family. And we just kept doing that until we couldn't do that anymore.
And that's amazing, because that's all about trying to make up for the time you don't think you're going to have, and
Right.
now you've had the time. I mean, when they told you 3 to 5 years and that the last 2 years could be rough, was it ever in your frame of mind that 25, 30 years later you could be sitting here in this kind of health?
Absolutely not. The only person that really had faith for that was my dad. He was always like, you're going to beat this. You guys are going to beat this. And I was just looking at him like, have you read the facts about this disease? And amazingly, all I have to say is our family must have started out with strong immune systems.
it's pretty amazing for me that that my family could have this story, my mom could go through all of this, and it could come to this point, that I could use sort of the platform that's been provided to invest my time and energy into something that that is just really positive.